Everybody. This is Brett Ingram, and this is the optYOUmize podcast, the show that helps entrepreneurs build their dream business and dream life. Today, we're talking with David Sauers, co-founder and CEO of Royal Restrooms, luxury portable restrooms rentals for events, weddings, and commercial uses. It's a nationally recognized brand with over 50 office locations. I'm super excited about this because I actually think franchising is a fascinating way to grow a business and to do it with massive leverage. So, with that, welcome, David, and thanks a lot for joining us.
Hey, Brett, thanks. Appreciate you having me on today.
Absolutely, it's a pleasure. And I have a bunch of questions. I have a lot of curiosity around this, but I do want to start off a little bit just with your background. Can you just give us a general idea in terms of what motivated you or inspired you to become an entrepreneur and start a business in the first place?
Well, Brett, there's a lot of things that always lead to that entrepreneurship, I think. But for me, it was at an early age. I always wanted to. I was always fascinated by people's businesses and how things operated, and I just always looked for how can I do it a little bit better. Even when you weren't asked to do a specific task in any job that you were, it's always like, how can you improve this? How can you make the experience a little better? And it was kind of almost like a game to me back then. I would, make up stories when I was when I worked I guess a little, I was in a popcorn store, and I had all of these people from all over the country that visited Savannah. So I wasn't well traveled, but I would take their stories because I would hear what they, where they were from and the exciting things that they had. And then somebody else would be like, oh yeah, I'm from, Columbus, Ohio. And it's like, and I remembered something from Columbus, Ohio. And it just it was almost kind of just a game, and it made people comfortable, more inviting, and it just opened the conversation. So, just different things all around. It just created, spontaneity, and how do we make things a little bit better?
I think, I think a couple things there that you said really, make a lot of sense. I think, one of the things is, the power of stories, right? I mean, anytime that there's a way to connect with other people through stories or things, I mean, one of the things that I love about podcasting, one of the things I love about having guests on the show is the fact that I learn something every time. And so it doesn't matter how much business knowledge I have or how many other, like, there's always things that are in common that I see these common threads that are always woven through. And then there's always a bit of uniqueness. And that's really fascinating. But I also love the idea of what you said in terms of sort of making it a game and looking for ways where you could find efficiencies or find better ways to do things. Um, I think it's something that's sort of baked into our DNA if we're sort of born or grow up with that entrepreneurial bug. I mean, I know as a kid, I had paper routes when I was really young. Then I got a little bit older and I started to get into other entrepreneurial things. And I always was looking for what's the business angle of this? What is there a way, if I was ever in a situation where I'm dealing with a company, even as a customer, and I'll see something that doesn't look like it's running well, I'm thinking to myself, well, if I was doing this, how would I change this? How would I make this experience better for people or things like that? And I just think it's sort of a way of thinking you develop if that's the way your mind works. And so that's a really cool way to think and sort of go about business in general. So restrooms, this to me is fascinating because restrooms are obviously something we all need, we all use, but and where did you get the idea to start a business about luxury portable restrooms?
Well, well, Brett, restrooms are a necessity. I mean, it is part of our everyday life. You want to do it in comfort. You want to do it in a private setting. It's one of the things that we still kind of hold dear. It's like guarding your money. Like this is my safe place. This is my throne. You know, um, but getting back to what you had said earlier, as well, having a business, being an entrepreneur, it's it's all about continuing that creativity. And with Royal Restrooms, what we saw is I saw a need that was just kind of pushed aside. Nobody wanted to talk about it. Nobody wanted to change it. It was just the accepted norm. And you know, if I can have you sit here and think for a moment and put yourself in my shoes, 20 something years ago, I have my two daughters with me, and we are at a Shakespeare in the Park festival. My oldest, she is potty training, so we walk over to a porta potty. And I've got my youngest one, Cece, on my hip, and we enter the porta potty, and she's like, "Whoa, Dad, what is this?"
Yeah.
And at the time, I've got Cece on my hip, and I mean, most people can visualize this. They've
Sure.
experienced this before, and I turn around and it's a tight box, and I look over and Stella's got her hands on the toilet, and I'm just panicked, like just pure like, oh my gosh, what do I do? It was like, where's my wife? I need help. I need help. It was panic mode, and so I looked out and I asked this lady, I was like, can you please hold my daughter, Cece? I'm kind of worried. So I've got my foot cracked open on the door, so one that we can see, but also to keep an eye on the other one. And I'm holding Stella up so that she doesn't touch anything else. And she pees on me. And it was just such an infuriating moment that I didn't know what to do. There's nowhere to wash my hands. There's no light. It's like, how do you stop this? How do you control it? You just couldn't. Because we were in a porta potty. And back then that's just what it was. It was a box. It was just a hole, and you know that was what we were accustomed to. But my young kids were not accustomed to that. They did not understand what it was that we were looking at, and at that point I was just like, why, why is this the acceptable norm? And so I left the concert, took the kids home, left my wife there, and I drew out a half bath, measured my half bath down in my house, and it's like, we can put this on a trailer. And that's where the vision or the idea started. And it was my business partner Robert Glisson who was actually really the catalyst that moved it forward. He really prompted that initiative. I would have probably sat on that idea and just push it to the side like every other little thing in your little black book that you have an idea. But Robert really was the one that was like, we can do this, and this was a great idea, and thus spawned Royal Restrooms.
It's your story is so relatable because for anybody who has kids, right? I mean, first of all, even if you're an adult, you've been to one of these places where whether it's a festival or a beach or whatever, and you need to use the bathroom, but you go and you look and you're like, I'm just gonna have to hold it. I can't even go in there. It's so bad. And I know, especially with kids, it's terrifying because, like you said, you don't want them to touch anything. They don't have the awareness about the germs or anything else. And if there's nowhere to even wash your hands after, so if you're dirty, it's one thing. If then you can wash up, but then you can't even wash up either. So I know it's so relatable in so many ways. When we go places, my wife will say, "Well, if we know we're going to be in a place where it's sort of porta potties or whatever, we got to find like a Dunkin' Donuts or a place that I know that I can go if we need to run over and because I'm not going to be able to use that." And so I think, it makes a lot of logical sense, and it's amazing to me that it actually did grow out of a personal experience, which I think, by the way, a lot of the best inventions and a lot of the best business ideas actually come from that place. But it is fascinating that you actually did something about it instead of saying, hey, I got this idea in the back of a napkin, but I'm just gonna, whatever, I'll let somebody else do it. And so, that's amazing. So, so there are a lot of ways to grow a business. What made you think about franchising as the way to go?
Well, that is a very long story. We Robert and I had pretty successful careers here in Savannah. I was a banker and Robert was an engineer. Um, we never intended to really grow the business. Um, it just evolved. People, they saw the need. They liked it. They wanted our bathrooms in their area. They felt the drive of like, hey, this is needed in my community. But so we licensed originally,
Okay.
and we were forced into becoming a franchise just because of the federal regulations. So we started out with a few licenses, and then boom, we are essentially a franchise. And it wasn't that we intended it to be a franchise. It's just that the things that we started doing, marketing under one website, not just licensing the name, but also making sure that the trailers were, uniformly kept. And all of a sudden, because we're putting those, I guess, stipulations in there, we
Mhm.
fell under a different set of rules. But we franchised it out, and it's more been a slow growth model. We have not ever put any marketing effort or even a real team to grow the franchise sales side of it. It's always the people who are with us have wanted to be with us. They have kind of been in our ear about it. We want to be on Royal Restrooms. We want to do Royal Restrooms. And some of the offices, they may have started out as a kind of as a side hustle. We have a lot of businesses in the industry that they operate one or two of these as a side hustle, kind of like a piece of real estate. But when you really start to get into it, and when you really want to start doing more, um, it becomes a business, and it's a full-time business. And insurance, marketing, from franchise to disaster relief to special events to festivals, all of a sudden you need a team, you need a staff. You can't just do it on the side anymore. And that's where people needed the help from. I'm going to have one or two of these to I'm going to really make this into a business. And that's where we fit in, and that's where we thrive.
It's really cool. So, it is funny to me and fascinating how sort of things went organically, right? I mean, some people, when they start a business, they've got this idea in their head, and this is where it's going to end up. And so now I just sort of reverse it and I figure out all the steps in between. In your case, it's sort of the opposite because you started with the idea, but then it's sort of the demand and the circumstance sort of dictated the next steps, which I think is fascinating, but very cool because most often with a business, we feel like we have to sort of beat it into submission or push it as hard as we can to get it to move. And so to have something where you can just sort of go with it as opposed to needing to really drive it and push it and all that, I think is cool and obviously a testament to the demand. So so where is the business now and where do you see it heading over the next few years?
So we're finishing up our 20th year. We've been in business for 20 years. That was a huge milestone that we hit. Um, and you know, really, it's kind of been stay the course. Our primary focus has always been events, festivals, weddings, that sort of stuff. and we've branched into really it was uh, society as a whole is changing that environment. I mean, COVID was a huge big impact and awareness. You know, more people wanted to be to maintain um, that cleanliness, but also a lot of events and festivals have realized that, you know, getting people to your event, you want to keep people at your event, and you want to keep that entire atmosphere that you're promoting. So if you're promoting a family fair or a book fair, or you know, whatever kind of festival it is, a festival of lights or tree, you know, you have to provide facilities that your patrons expect. You know, you can't decide that you're going to sell them a $10 coffee and then put them in a porta john. You know, there's a level of expectancy, I guess, uh, now. And like I said, we've been in business for 20 years, so we're not new anymore. It's not
Yeah.
some new product. You know, our industry in the last 2 years has grown 200%. I mean,
Wow.
I was talking to a manufacturer, and he told me that they've built more trailers in the last 2 years than they have in the last 20.
Wow.
So the industry is continuing to grow, and it's you know the demand is there from the patrons. People expect this now, so it's not like, oh, we can skimp on this, we can cut corners here. You can't anymore. You know, we are our business is the standard for community events, for festivals, for weddings. That is that's the standard. We've set the standard now.
So can I ask you, how does it work, right? So if I'm running a festival and I say, okay, I don't want a bunch of porta potties, first of all, can you give me a sense of what specifically the luxury restroom experience is like? And how does the sort of onboarding for that work as a customer? Like you set a delivery date and then you show up with the trailers and set things up, or how exactly does that work?
Yeah, exactly. That's the process. You know, the funny thing is we call it luxury portable restrooms when it's really just a bathroom. You know, we don't necessarily know how to name it from a porta potty, so we use that term luxury or fancy or whatever. But it's really just a regular bathroom that you would see in a hotel or a restaurant or your home. You know, it's fully functioning. It has your vanity. It has a mirror. It's climate controlled. Has real toilet paper. There's lights. You know, you can move around in it a little bit. So it's just really a real bathroom on a trailer. But the process is fairly simple. Um, you know, we usually like to talk with the clients to find out what their expectant guests are, or how big the crowd is, and we can offer, uh, you know, tools as far as, you know, what you need 5 stalls, do you need 40 stalls, which will require XYZ of trailers. You know, how often do they need servicing? What does the flow of traffic look like? So a festival that may have, uh, or a nonprofit organization that you have 400 guests, a 3 stall could be fine for if it's an all day event and there's not really, it's more long term. But if you've got a concert and you have 400 people, it's more of a mad rush. So you might want to double that, because you've got the ingress and egress of people, because you want to get people moving back through it. But if it's an all day festival, people don't mind waiting in line for just a little bit for something nicer. And that's just kind of a rule of thumb. The trailer can take the capacity, because most 3 stall trailers have the capacity of 10 to 12 porta johns. So, if you kind of get that sense, you can't service as many people as fast, but the longevity, and people appreciate that. And it just says so much more about the people putting the event on, that they care about their patrons, that they care about how their event looks. And it's, it's remarkable how many people comment on the restrooms, and surveys that we get back from event organizers that are like, we never put anything like this. And even on the survey, and it's like people wrote in, "Thank you for providing the nice restrooms."
Yeah.
We, we've even had surveys that say that people stay on average almost 40 minutes longer at your event with nicer facilities, which means that the people are spending more time, they're spending more money, and
Yep.
they're more likely to promote your event or return next year.
Yeah, it is funny to me because it is one of those things that when you consider going to an event, one of the things that in general does occur to you is what are the facilities going to be like? I have two sons who play soccer, and so we travel a decent amount for that. And one sometimes you go to a field or a facility, and it's nice if it's connected to a school or something. You can go inside. That's great. But there's one club that one of my younger sons played some games at, and we always like to go to that field because it's an outdoor field and it's separated from any building, but they actually have a restroom that is I don't know if it was brought in on a trailer or what it is, but it's essentially like a portable restroom, but it is a real restroom. And so it's something that I even, noticed and remembered because it was something that stood out that much because what you're used to is so different from that. That when there's something that's an upgrade and it's significant and normal, that does stand out. It does change your perception of the experience, no doubt. So, is in terms of franchising in general, I'm curious, what do you see as the major advantages or disadvantages of franchising as a business model?
Uh, well, you know, everybody wants their business to succeed and they want it to grow, and they think that they have this great idea, and that belief is so important. You have to believe in yourself, you have to believe in what you're doing. And you know from a franchising standpoint, our advantage is we were kind of first to market. We kind of came up with this. We envisioned how this market would look. We set the tone. Everybody out in the industry, whether they want to, agree to this or acknowledge it or not, they look at what we're doing. They mimic what we're doing. It's amazing how many different websites look similar to ours. The decor, the little small copy cat images, and it's flattering, but we have the historical knowledge. We know what we're doing. We've been to every kind of event. We've been to every kind of situation. So what really puts us out there as one of the leaders now, that and has been continuous, is the fact that we have our professional service. We know how to resolve a problem before it starts. So it's that training. It's our owners' mentality that they instill, the pride of trying to make sure that we solve something before anything ever happens. So when we deliver a trailer, not only is it clean, but it's prepped, it's checked. We kind of train the person that's also there. We tell them, okay, hey, these are low flow toilets. You may have a clog. Don't fret. It's not full. We can unclog it, and we have like a small tutorial usually in the trailer, but our guys have walked through that, and it's that extra level of service that we're just not dropping off a trailer. It's not somebody just, hey, it's there, because we've seen businesses that drop off a trailer, and it's like they have to go set it up. They have to plug it in. They don't necessarily know what they're doing. Um, and if that's their business model, that's their business model. But it's our professional service that we've extended past just the rental of our restrooms that has maintained our business as a whole.
And I think, look, experience is a great teacher, because any business or anything that you endeavor to start in the beginning, you can only anticipate proactively so many things. There are going to be some things that come up, some things that happen that you didn't expect, that you didn't anticipate. But once you've been doing something for long enough, and with a 20-year history, I mean, congratulations, by the way, that's a quite a milestone. But in addition to that, over that amount of time, you see a lot of stuff. And once you've seen all of those things, it prepares you for how to be proactive in terms of preventing those issues from coming up again in the future. And that's something that it doesn't matter the technology side of it, the none of that other stuff ultimately matters in terms of you can't replace the experience of understanding and being able to predict potential issues and having solutions for them. So I think, experience can really be a great teacher, and that's a testament to the 20 years in business. So starting a business just in general, I know for some people is daunting, the idea is challenging. Um, with franchising, do people need a business background to be successful with that?
No, no, not at all. That's one of the joys of franchising is we've laid out the blueprint for you, and if you follow XYZ, that's what a franchise is for. It helps you through that process. But if you are starting a business, what you do need is you need that grit and that gumption and that ambition. And so many people want to buy something, but they still don't really want to work it. They want to buy something that's it's some get rich quick. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Okay, yeah, you've got a plan in your head, but you really don't have you know a plan. Owning a small business and starting a business is more than I'm going to start a business. It is 24/7. It is long nights. It is headaches. There is no real vacation. And I think a lot of people don't understand that process of it, because a lot of people are like, oh, you've got this, oh, you've done this, you have this kind of car, you have this kind of house. Not always. You know, I worked my tail off for years, and I know on a lot of your podcasts, you talk about that life family balance. And that is a very difficult thing to balance when you are starting a business, because you feel like you are sacrificing for your family to do things better for your family, and you miss out on a lot. You
Yeah.
miss out on a whole lot, and you tell yourself you're doing it to better your family. And in some ways you are right, but you still have to rein yourself back in and say it's not always that important. It can wait. Go to the soccer game. It can wait. Find the time somewhere else to manage the things that you need to manage. It's not always important. You don't have to answer that email at dinner. You don't have to take that text. You don't have to get on that. Sometimes you do, but not every time.
Yeah.
But I think most people don't understand that just because you buy even a franchise, that you don't have to do anything. No, you're going to get out of it as much as what you're going to put into it, and that requires you know your time and effort.
Yeah, I mean it's 100% true. I know when I was starting my business, for the first several years in particular, I wasn't really present, because even when I was at a family event or a function, My
Mhm.
mind was always somewhere else. And part of that was necessity because it was a new business and I was trying to grow it. But part of it was also a mentality that even after I started to become more successful and I had some things set up, I still found that to sort of be my default. And I had to consciously say to myself, listen, the reason that I did this business in the first place is so I could be present with my family and be there. I didn't want to be the person that made a ton of money, but was traveling all over the world, creating a lifestyle for my family that I wasn't there to enjoy. Then when my kids are all grown up, say, "Hey guys, you want to spend time together?" And they're like, "I'm busy. I got my own life to lead." And so I think it's a powerful message. The fact that, yeah, you want to put your heart and soul into your business, but you also still have to recognize what's important and make time deliberately and specifically on purpose for the things that matter in your life. If right now there's a soccer game or there's this event going on or a birthday party, that time is not going to come back. So if you could carve out that hour and maybe you need to stay up an extra hour and you're a little more tired the next day, so be it. Do the work at night, do the work, at other times, but make time for the stuff that's really important to you because you don't get oftentimes, another shot at those one-time events. And so I do think that that's super important. So if somebody wants to become a franchisee, what tips or advice can you offer somebody in terms of the kind of franchise they should invest in?
So if you're talking about like mine, Royal Restrooms,
Sure.
um, you know, the investment is a lot of upfront. The beauty of our business is a lot of times, you're not running out of the gate booking trailers. That it's there is a lag time. You're booking stuff 6 months out, 8 months out, 10 months out. So in the beginning, it is a lot of get out and meet somebody, get out and start talking about it. It's that big push. So it's not a whole lot of work related items that are taking you away from anything. That comes later. So our business starts out, you know, relatively slower than your typical franchise business because it builds as you go. Um,
Hmm.
and over the years, it continues to get just busier and busier and busier. But at that point, you're able to manage back and scale back and hopefully put the right people in the right places to start alleviating some of that stress and that they can manage their own time. You have a sales call person, you have delivery drivers, you have people that repair your trailers. So all of these different little facets, instead of you doing kind of everything, turns into that's the book of business. That's your business that you're planning, and at that point, hopefully, you are able to be the market head. You're the spokesperson. You're going to the chamber meetings. You're going to the business after hours. You're socializing. You're talking to the wedding planner. You're talking to the car show. You're attending the car shows. You're kind of trying to do starting to do some of the funner things that the business brings you. So at the beginning, it's a balance. It's a big push forward with not a whole lot of results because your results are in the future.
And I think that's common with any business. We get into it for the idea of what it can deliver for us. But in the beginning, it's like a rocket ship taking off, right? You need a lot of that fuel. You need a lot of power and momentum. Once you get it going and you've broken the atmosphere, then you're gliding, then it's a lot more fun. You have a lot more options. You have a lot more freedom. You have choices with the stuff that you're doing. But in the beginning, you have to expect that you're going to need to put in more than trading time for money, like at a job. At a job, you put in your hours, you get your paycheck, and that's great. But you're also limited in terms of where your boss sees your potential, those kinds of things. And so it's you invest a little bit more upfront with the idea that on the back end you're going to benefit more. So, all right. So, where can people find out more about you, connect with you, find out more about Royal Restrooms? What's the best place for them to do that?
The best place is to start at our website, which is royalrestrooms.com. I don't have any personal social media, but I am on LinkedIn under David Sauers. But a lot of our offices have their own private Instagrams or Facebooks. Nationally, we have Royal Restrooms nationwide on TikTok, Facebook, and Instagram as well, so that you can follow us and check out a few different things. But the best place to get the information is royalrestrooms.com under the franchise section.
Awesome. Thanks a lot for that. So, I have one last question because I think it's important, and I always love to know what everyone's going to say about it. And that is, what's your number one tip for success as a business owner or an entrepreneur?
Uh, Number one tip I would think is to put your ideas out there to yourself. Maybe not to everybody, but make sure that you say what it is that you are going to do to yourself. Because I believe putting that idea out there, it continues to manifest and build, and it generates the ideas that keep you going. Second would be gratitude. You know, you need to be grateful for what has been bestowed upon you and those around you. You may think that you've done this on your own, but there's been a lot of hands in this and a lot of people that have helped you get to where you're going, and you just can't take that for granted.
I love that advice. I'm a big believer in gratitude. I think that it's easy sometimes to feel like because we're rolling up our sleeves, we're doing the work, but at the end of the day, life is about relationships, right? And one of the things that brings the richness in our experience of living in general is just the quality of the relationships that we have, and whether or not it's somebody that's helping us with something that's specific or just in general being somebody who's an important person in our life. I think it's super important to have that kind of gratitude. So I love that advice. Um, Perfect. Thanks a lot. And with that, it's just about time to wrap things up. So I want to thank you again, David, so much for sharing all your insights and great tips with us. Visit royalrestrooms.com for more information and franchise opportunities. Thanks a lot for tuning in, everybody. And always remember, no matter what you want from your business and your life, don't compromise, optimize.